Rehearsal dinner was supposed to be the easy part. We'd already survived 8 months of planning, the venue deposits, the caterer tastings, the seating chart arguments that somehow lasted 3 weekends. The hard part was behind us. That's what I kept telling myself as I touched up my lipstick in the bathroom mirror of the Fairmont, 2 floors above the private dining room where 60 people were waiting to celebrate us. My dress was the deep green my mother always said made my eyes look like sea glass. My hands were steady. I felt ready. I should have paid more attention to the fact that his mother hadn't looked at me once all evening. I'm a project manager at a mid-sized construction firm in Vancouver. I've been doing it since I was 26, which means I've spent the better part of 8 years watching people hide problems inside perfectly organized spreadsheets. I know what a masked agenda looks like. I'm good at reading rooms, reading silences, reading the particular way someone laughs a half second too late. I thought that skill was professional. I didn't understand until that Friday night at the Fairmont that I'd been leaving it at the office. His sister started speaking before the appetizers were cleared. She stood up with her wine glass and said she wanted to share something with the group. I assumed a toast. His family did things formally. They were from a tight-knit Quebec law family that had moved to Vancouver when he was a teenager. And there was always a structure to their gatherings. A sequence. A sense that things happened in a particular order for a particular reason. I set down my fork and smiled up at her. In our family, she said, marriage is a real partnership. Not just emotionally, but in terms of how a household runs. She looked around the table warmly, like she was sharing something generous. The women in this family have always been the backbone. You manage the home, you support the parents, you make sure things are taken care of. That's not a burden, that's a privilege. She was looking at me when she said that last part. I kept my face very still. It's something I learned in construction. When you're a woman in a site meeting and someone says something that lands wrong, you don't react. You wait. You let them keep talking until you understand exactly what you're dealing with. Vivienne will be taking on a lot, she continued, smiling at me now directly, warm and certain, like she was welcoming me into something I'd already agreed to. The household accounts, the scheduling for Maman and Papa's appointments, the cooking on Sundays. It's how we do things. It's how the family stays close. 60 people at that table. His aunts, his cousins, my 2 closest friends, my colleague who'd driven up from Richmond, my brother who had flown in from Toronto. All of them watching. I took a sip of my water. Then I set the glass down and asked the first question. Are these expectations written anywhere? Like, is this a formal family agreement, or is this something you're deciding tonight? The room went very quiet. His sister blinked. It's tradition. Okay, I said. And when you say household accounts, do you mean for our home, or for your parents' home as well? She smiled tighter. Both, naturally. The family functions as a unit. I nodded slowly. I didn't say anything else. But something shifted in me in that moment. Some quiet structural thing, like a load-bearing wall quietly deciding it was done. He hadn't said a word. I looked at him. He was looking at his plate. I want to be fair to him, even now, because I spent 4 years being fair to him, and I think fairness is a habit that doesn't break easily. We met at a friend's barbecue in Kitsilano the summer I turned 29. He was funny and warm, and he had this way of listening that made you feel like what you said actually mattered. He remembered things. Small things. The name of my childhood dog. The fact that I hate cilantro. The anniversary of my dad's passing. For 4 years, he was the person I called first when I got the promotion. When the water pipe burst in my condo at 2 a.m. When my brother's marriage fell apart and I didn't know what to say to him. I loved him with the kind of steady confidence you feel when you've built something real. What I didn't understand, what I was slow to see because I wanted not to see it, was that loving me and choosing me were not always the same thing for him. After the dinner, in the elevator back to our room, I asked him directly, "Did you know she was going to say that?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "My family has certain values." That's not what I asked. Vivienne. He said my name the way he always did when he thought I was being too precise, too lawyerly. Which is a thing he said even though I'm not a lawyer. It's not a big deal. It's just how they think about things. She listed specific duties in front of 60 people. She was trying to make you feel included. I looked at him for a long time. He looked back at me with the expression of a man who had decided somewhere along the way that managing me and loving me were the same project. I didn't sleep well that night. I should tell you about the condo because it matters. I bought my place in East Vancouver when I was 27, a 2-bedroom on the 4th floor with a view of the mountains on clear days, which in Vancouver is maybe 40% of the year, but still. I'd saved for 4 years, put down $140,000, and felt the particular pride of someone who had done something on her own terms, on her own timeline. When we got engaged and started talking about where we'd live, it made sense to sell and pool resources. We found a place in Mount Pleasant, a 3-bedroom with a small yard, the kind of house that felt like a future. I put in $160,000 toward the down payment. He put in $35,000. His mother suggested we put the title in both our names and his father's, for family stability. I didn't agree to that, I want to be clear. But I did agree to both our names, and I signed papers that I should have had my friend, who was a real estate lawyer, which is something I did not take advantage of nearly enough, review more carefully before I signed them. My friend, when I finally called her the morning after the rehearsal dinner and told her everything, went very quiet in a way that told me she was working through something complicated. "How much of your signature is on the mortgage documents?" she asked. "All of it," I said. "He has maybe 30% of the financial stake, but we're equally on title." Another silence. "Okay, don't say anything to them yet. Not until we know what we're working with. The wedding is in 36 hours. "I know," she said. "Don't say anything." I spent the day before my wedding in a coffee shop on Main Street across from my friend, going through documents on her laptop. She'd pulled the title records, the mortgage agreement, a letter his mother had sent our shared email account 3 weeks ago that I'd skimmed and filed away without reading properly. It was a letter outlining what she called family contribution expectations. Financial contributions from our household to his parents. Monthly, ongoing, beginning after the wedding. The number she had written was $800 a month. I read that line 3 times. "She's seed him," my friend said quietly. I scrolled up. His name was in the CC field. I put the coffee cup down very carefully and stared at the mountain view out the window and thought about the 4 years I had spent building something with someone, and whether the something I'd been building was the same thing he'd been building, or whether we had been, the whole time, working from different blueprints. "What are my options?" I asked. My friend walked me through them. It took 2 hours. By the time we were done, I knew exactly what I was looking at, and exactly what I needed to do. I also knew that I wasn't going to get married the next day. It's strange, making a decision that large. I'd expected it to feel catastrophic. Some part of me had been braced for that. The ground opening up, the grief arriving all at once like a wave. But what I actually felt, sitting in that coffee shop with the rain starting against the window, was something quieter, like a room that had been slightly tilted my whole time in it, finally coming level. I called the venue first, then the caterer. The florist had a strict cancellation policy, and I was past the window, which cost me. But I had already calculated that the alternative cost more. My friend handled the title issue. There's a process in BC for contesting joint ownership when there's significant financial disparity in contribution, and she knew it well. It wasn't fast, but she filed immediately. He called me at 6 in the evening. "Where are you? My mother is asking." "I'm not coming tonight," I said. "I'm not coming tomorrow either." A long silence. "Vivienne, what does that mean?" "It means I've canceled the wedding." I heard him breathing. Then, "Because of what my sister said at dinner?" "That was just. Because of the letter your mother sent. The one about $800 a month. The one you were CC'd on and didn't mention." I paused. "I needed to know if you knew. Now I know." He didn't deny it. that told me everything the silence before hadn't. "This isn't what I wanted," he said finally. "I know," I said. "But it's what you chose." I hung up and sat with the phone in my lap for a while. Then I ordered another coffee and started drafting the message I'd send to our guests. I didn't write anything dramatic. I didn't explain. I just said that the wedding would not be taking place, that I was sorry for the disruption, and that I was well. My brother called immediately and I answered, and he didn't ask questions. He just said, "Tell me where you are, and I'll come." Which is the thing about family that is actually family. They show up without needing the full story first. He came over with Thai food and we sat on the floor of my friend's guest room and watched an old hockey game, and I didn't cry, actually. Not that night. I think I was still too clear-eyed. The grief comes later, when the clarity fades and you're left with the ordinary shape of a life that was supposed to look different. The call started around 9 that evening. His mother called 4 times, his sister called twice. He called 11 times between 9 and midnight, then stopped, then called 3 more times the next morning. His aunt, who I had met exactly twice, somehow got my number and left a voicemail telling me I was making a terrible mistake and that I clearly didn't understand what family meant. I listened to that one twice. I found it clarifying. My friend had filed the paperwork by Monday morning. The financial disparity in our down payment contributions was documented. $160,000 to his 35, every transfer traceable, and she had a strong case for a declaration that my equity interest was proportional to my contribution rather than 50-50. His family had retained their own lawyer by Tuesday, which my friend had anticipated. What they had not anticipated was that I had kept every email, every text message, the letter about the $800, a voice memo I had made on my phone the morning after the rehearsal dinner, just narrating what had been said. The exact words his sister had used. Because I'd had a feeling, and I've learned to trust my feelings when they speak in that particular register. My friend said the voice memo was, legally speaking, extremely useful. The title issue resolved in my favor 6 weeks later. I got the property transferred into my name alone, with a cash settlement for his portion of the equity at current market value, which, given Vancouver real estate, was not a small number. He took it. His family did not want it to go to a formal hearing, and I understood why. The last time he called was a Thursday evening, 2 months after the wedding that didn't happen. I was in a hardware store picking up paint samples for the living room. I decided to repaint. The color we'd chosen together felt wrong now, and I wanted something that felt like mine. He called, and I looked at the phone and thought about the 4 years. The barbecue in Kitsilano. The way he'd remembered the name of my childhood dog. Then I put the paint samples in my basket and let it go to voicemail. He said he was sorry, that he hadn't known how to stand up to his family, that he told himself it would work out, that I was strong enough to handle it, which I understood was its own kind of cruelty. The assumption that someone's strength is a substitute for your courage. I didn't call back, not because I was angry, though I had been, but because some conversations are finished even before they start, and calling back would only have reopened something that I had already carefully closed. I repainted the living room a deep, warm terracotta. It took 2 weekends. My brother helped, and we talked the whole time. About our parents, about his own marriage falling apart. About what it means to choose yourself when you've spent a long time organizing your life around other people's versions of you. The mountains were visible that Sunday afternoon, clear and white and very far away, the way Vancouver shows you its best self on the days when the rain finally lifts. I stood in my living room with paint on my hands and thought, this is mine. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like exactly enough. I think about the rehearsal dinner sometimes, not with anger anymore, mostly with a kind of quiet recognition. The way you look back at a moment and finally understand what it was actually showing you. His sister stood up in that room and said the quiet part out loud. And the strange thing is, I'm grateful she did. Because the alternative, finding out 6 months into a marriage, or 6 years, would have cost me so much more than a venue deposit and a canceled florist order. What happened to me wasn't unusual. That's the part that took me longest to accept. The pattern was ordinary. A woman who had built something real, who loved someone genuinely, and who trusted that love was enough to carry both people forward. It wasn't a failure of feeling, it was a failure of information. I didn't know what I was walking into because I hadn't asked the right questions early enough. I'd been so focused on what I wanted the future to look like that I hadn't paid close attention to what was already there, in plain sight, waiting for me to notice. There's something I've come to believe about integrity, not as a concept, but as something practical, something that shows up in small decisions, long before the big ones arrive. He knew about the letter. The $800 a month, the expectation that my income would fold into his family's financial life without my knowledge or consent. He knew, and he said nothing. That silence wasn't neutral. Every day he chose not to tell me was a day he chose his own comfort over my right to make an informed decision about my own life. I don't think he was a bad person. I think he was someone who had learned to manage difficult things by not naming them. But in a partnership, that habit is its own kind of betrayal. The intelligence piece, and I mean this in the practical sense, the knowing what you're signing sense, is something I wish someone had told me earlier. Read everything. Not just the mortgage documents, the emails, the CC fields, the letters you skim and file away because you're busy and you trust the person who received them alongside you. My friend, who spent 2 hours across a coffee shop table showing me exactly what I'd signed and exactly what I could do about it, gave me something that weekend that no amount of love could have given me: clarity. The ability to act on my own behalf with actual information. And then there's the matter of standing up, not dramatically, not with a speech or a scene, just standing up, calling the venue, calling the caterer, sitting with the decision long enough to know it was right, and then moving through it anyway, even though my hands weren't entirely steady. Vivienne, which is to say me, walked out of that rehearsal dinner and made 14 phone calls over 2 days that changed the entire shape of my life. None of them were easy. All of them were necessary. I repainted my living room terracotta. My brother helped. We talked about our parents and about what it means to choose yourself after a long time of organizing your life around someone else's blueprint. The mountains were out that Sunday, clear and white and very far away. I stood in my own home with paint on my hands and thought, I did the right thing. Not the easy thing, not the thing that made everyone comfortable. The right thing. That distinction, I've learned, is worth protecting.